All right, let's jump into the ring. Today, we're diving deep into Japanese pro wrestling. Puroresu, as some fans know it. But we're not talking about all the flash and showmanship, no, no. Today, we're going behind the scenes. We're looking at those crazy shoot incidents. When matches went off script, things got real, sometimes way too real.
Yeah, you know what's really interesting about these incidents? They expose that underlying tension that's always there in pro wrestling. It's this fine line between, the performance, the spectacle, and the actual possibility of a real fight breaking out.
It's like, when you're watching a movie and you can just tell, like, those actors actually can't stand each other. And then they have this big fight scene. And you're like, oh, is that real? It
Right.
adds a whole different layer.
Exactly. It's like a peek behind the curtain, a glimpse into this world where the lines between fiction and reality get, well, really blurry.
Yeah.
But before we get into all the crazy stories, we should probably get on the same page, make sure everyone understands the lingo.
Yeah, good point. Can you give us a quick breakdown of the jargon? What exactly is kayfabe, a shoot? And what does it mean to go into business for themselves?
Sure thing. So kayfabe is basically pro wrestling code for keeping up the illusion that everything is real. It's like the foundation of the whole industry. A shoot, on the other hand, is when that illusion is shattered, either on purpose or sometimes by accident.
And going into business for themselves is when a wrestler decides, I'm calling the shots now, forget the script.
Exactly. They're basically saying, I'm doing things my way, and it can get really chaotic really fast. These terms are essential to understanding what went down in these shoot incidents. And many of them, they stem from personal grudges, stylistic disagreements, even sometimes just an attempt to manipulate the story for personal gain.
So we're talking about a world where staged drama spills over into real-life conflict, right? And no one embodies that more than Akira Maeda. This guy was a rising star in New Japan Pro Wrestling back in the 80s. Super skilled, tons of charisma, but he wanted something more than the usual theatrics. He was all about realism.
Yeah, Maeda, he wasn't just about the physicality. He saw shoot style as a way to elevate pro wrestling, give it a sense of honor, a legitimacy that he felt was missing from the more theatrical choreographed stuff.
So it was kind of like an artistic statement. He was pushing the boundaries of what pro wrestling could be.
Absolutely. He wanted to blur the lines between performance and reality and create this hybrid style that combined the athleticism and storytelling of pro wrestling with the raw intensity of a real fight. Actually, Maeda, along with some other wrestlers like Satoru Sayama, the original Tiger Mask, and Yoshiaki Fujiwara, they felt so strongly about this new style that they actually broke away from New Japan in 1984.
Wow, that's a bold move. And they formed their own promotion, right?
Right, they formed the Universal Wrestling Federation, the UWF.
And this is where things start to get really interesting, right? Because this UWF, it was short-lived, mainly because of clashing egos and those differing visions for this shoot style. Now, tell me about this infamous match between Maeda and Sayama.
Well, you could just feel the tension between those two. They were both incredibly skilled fighters, both with huge personalities, and their rivalry, I mean, it was as much about personal pride as it was about stylistic differences. And on September 2nd, 1985, during a UWF match, that tension, well, it just exploded.
I've seen clips of this match online. It's wild. It starts out as a pretty standard grappling match, very technical, super intense. And then boom, out of nowhere, Maeda just nails Sayama with this brutal knee strike right to the groin. Was that supposed to happen?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Some people argue it was planned, a spot that went wrong, while others think Maeda went off script on purpose, maybe out of frustration or, to make a statement.
Whatever the reason, it was a game changer.
Oh, absolutely. It was a huge turning point. Sayama was clearly injured. I mean, and the UWF pretty much fell apart not long after that. Sayama, he actually left pro wrestling for a whole decade after that incident.
Wow. So Maeda returns to New Japan, probably even more popular than before, but also with a huge target on his back. Was this the incident that cemented his reputation as a maverick, someone who wasn't afraid to, break the rules?
Oh, without a doubt. And it seems like New Japan management, well, maybe they were hoping to humble him a bit, or maybe they wanted to capitalize on his notoriety, but either way, they set up a match between Maeda and Andre the Giant.
Andre the Giant, the legend, known for his size, his strength, and, well, let's be honest, his appetite. That match must have been huge.
It was a highly anticipated match for sure. It took place in April of '86, and let me tell you, it was a bizarre spectacle.
Did Andre teach Maeda a lesson?
Not exactly. The match was, well, strange is a good word for it. Maeda, clearly frustrated because Andre wasn't really fighting back, spent most of the time just kicking Andre's legs. And Andre just stood there like a statue,
Wait, so Andre just stood there and took it?
pretty much. The referee looked completely lost, the crowd was dead silent, and the whole thing ended in this chaotic mess, a no contest. Andre refused to get up, and Maeda was declared the winner by forfeit.
Theories must abound about that, Matt.
Oh, they do. Was Andre told to punish Maeda?
Yeah.
Was he drunk? Was he injured? We might never know for sure. It was a mess. Nobody looked good coming out of that.
Sounds like it.
It was. It really showed the power dynamics in pro wrestling, though. And it just added to Maeda's image as this rebel, the anti-establishment guy. But his story doesn't end there. He had one more major shoot incident left in him, and this one involved another legend, Riki Choshu.
Okay, set the scene for me. Who is Choshu, and why was there bad blood between him and Maeda?
Choshu was a top star, a real big name, who had just come back to New Japan after wrestling for their rival, All Japan Pro Wrestling. A lot of the wrestlers, they resented him for that, saw it as a betrayal.
And Maeda was particularly vocal about it.
Oh yeah, Maeda was not happy about it at all. So you've got this pre-existing tension between them. Fast forward to November of '87. They were in a six-man tag match. The tension's super high. And bam, Maeda kicks Choshu right in the head while he's in a submission hold. And I'm not talking about a stage kick. This was a full-on, I'm taking you out kick.
Oh, wow.
Choshu ended up with a broken orbital bone. The match was a total disaster. And Maeda, well, he was suspended and then fired from New Japan. Talk about going into business for yourself.
It sounds like Maeda was determined to shake things up no matter what. But his story is just one piece of this whole shoot incident puzzle, right? There's a whole history of these things in Japanese pro wrestling. What else should we be looking at?
Maeda's story really shows how these shoot incidents, I mean, they could make a wrestler famous, even if it meant, going against the grain.
Yeah.
But he wasn't the only one blurring the lines between, like, the show and reality. There were others.
Right, plenty of other wrestlers pushing the boundaries, breaking kayfabe.
Oh.
What about Koji Kitao? That guy was a real hothead.
Oh, Kito. He was definitely a controversial figure, that's for sure. He came from a sumo background. But his career, well, it was plagued with disciplinary problems. Let's just say he wasn't exactly known for his patience or his ability to play by the rules.
So when he transitioned to pro wrestling, those issues came with him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That
Yeah.
short fuse of his and that tendency to take things personally, it followed him right into the ring. One of the most infamous incidents, it happened back in 1991. It was during a match against John Earthquake Tenta in Super World of Sports, or SWS for short.
Earthquake Tenta. Now, that's a name I haven't heard in a while. They were both former sumo wrestlers, right? Kitao and Tenta.
That's right. And this is where the whole sumo hierarchy thing comes into play. See, Kitao, even though he was kicked out of sumo, he still thought he was better than Tenta. And that perceived disrespect, it fueled a real-life animosity that, it spilled over into their match.
And that turned into a full-blown shoot.
Pretty much, yeah. When the bell rang, Kitao just seemed determined to humiliate Tenta. He refused to sell any of Tenta's moves, like they had no effect on him. And then he throws a few stiff punches. Some people even say he was trying to actually hurt Tenta.
So it was more like a street fight than a wrestling match? What did the audience think of all this?
They were stunned. I mean, they didn't know what to make of it, this whole chaotic scene. The referee, he was caught in the middle of this unscripted brawl and ended up getting kicked by Kitao. Led to a disqualification.
But Kitao didn't stop there, right?
No, not at all. He grabs a microphone and starts ranting about how pro wrestling is fake. I mean, can you imagine? A wrestler standing in the middle of the ring, just totally breaking kayfabe and exposing the whole industry.
What a wild move. Did Kitao ever, regret doing that?
It's hard to say. I mean, he was fired from SWS after that, but his wrestling career wasn't over. He eventually came back, this time with Nobuhiko Takada's UWI-FI. That was a promotion known for its emphasis on shoot-style wrestling.
Takada. That guy was a master manipulator, wasn't he? Always blurring those lines between performance and reality.
He was. And Kitao's second match in UWI-FI, it was against Takada himself, and it's another one of those shoot incidents that's, well, shrouded in controversy. The plan was for a 3-round draw. But Takada, always the showman, he decided to change things up.
So this was back in '92, right? What happened?
Well, in the third round, out of nowhere, Takada just nails Kitao with his perfect head kick, knocks him unconscious, crowd goes wild. Takada, he plays the hero, celebrating his victory. And Kitao, well, he wakes up to a very different reality than he was expecting.
Talk about going into business for yourself. It sounds like Takada used that whole incident to, boost his own status, cement UWFI's reputation for realism. A pretty brilliant move, even if it was ruthless.
Yeah, he knew how to play the game. And Takada's willingness to bend the rules, to manipulate the story, it wasn't just limited to, other pro wrestlers. He even started bringing in athletes from other combat sports. Like, he actually got former boxing heavyweight champion Trevor Berbick to fight in UWA-FI. He was trying to make the promotion seem even more legitimate.
Trevor Berbick, the guy who beat Muhammad Ali? That's a big name to bring into pro wrestling. What happened when those two worlds collided?
Well, that match, it was in December of '91, and it's a perfect example of how, cultural differences and miscommunication, it can really lead to a shoot incident.
So, was it like an intentional double cross by Takada, or was it just a big misunderstanding about the rules?
Now, the stories, they differ depending on who you ask. Some say the rules were vague on purpose so Takada could take advantage of the situation. Others say there were genuine communication issues, like Berbick thought low kicks were illegal, but Takada was operating under a different set of rules.
Regardless, the match itself must have been something to see.
Oh, it was. Almost comical, really. Takada, seeing that loophole, he just relentlessly goes after Berbick's legs with low kicks. And Berbick, he's clearly frustrated, feels like he's being cheated, keeps peeling to the referee, but the referee doesn't seem to care.
Did the audience get it, or were they buying into the whole drama?
Most of them seem to believe that Takada was just this ruthless fighter exploiting a loophole. They actually booed Berbick when he walked out of the match. They thought he was a coward who couldn't handle the pressure. It only took like 2.5 minutes.
Wow. So once again, Takada orchestrates this controversial ending, reinforces his image as this cunning strategist who will do anything to win.
Exactly. And all these incidents, they show how Takada used shoot incidents to create buzz, to keep UWI-FI in the headlines. But his story, it takes an interesting turn as we move into the early days of mixed martial arts, or MMA, in Japan. So you've got Takada, he's on top of the world, manipulating the narratives, pushing those boundaries. But what led to his downfall?
Yeah, where did it all go wrong for him?
Well, Takada, he was always trying to make UWFI seem like this legitimate fighting force, right?
Yeah.
So he starts publicly challenging Rickson Gracie.
Rickson Gracie, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu legend.
The one and only.
Yeah.
But Gracie, he wasn't interested in fighting under pro wrestling rules. He wanted a real fight, a no-holds-barred contest.
Makes sense. Gracie was a pioneer in MMA. He didn't want any part of that stage stuff. So did Takada back down?
Well, not exactly. Instead of fighting Gracie himself, he sends one of his trainees, Yoji Anjo, to challenge him.
Yoji Anjo. A skilled wrestler, but did he have any real fighting experience?
Not a ton. And he goes to California to confront Gracie at his own gym. Can you imagine?
Talk about a bad idea. That sounds incredibly reckless.
It was. Some think Anjo was just, young and arrogant. Others say he felt like he had to defend Takada's honor. Whatever the reason, it was a disaster. Gracie absolutely destroyed him. No footage of the fight was ever officially released, but people who were there, they said it was brutal. A total humiliation.
So Takada's plan to prove UWI's legitimacy, it backfired big time.
It did. And that incident, more than any other, it showed the limits of shoot-style wrestling when it came to, actual competition.
What did Takada do after that? Did he try to, bury the whole thing?
Nope. Quite the opposite, actually. He felt like he had to avenge Anjo, so he uses this incident to fuel the rivalry between UWFI and the growing world of MMA. This whole revenge narrative, it played out in the early days of Pride Fighting Championships.
Pride, one of the first big MMA promotions in Japan.
Exactly. And here's the irony of the whole thing. Takada, the master of shoot style, he was actually a pretty terrible fighter himself. He fought Rickson Gracie twice in Pride, in '97 and '98, and lost both times. And I'm talking about decisive losses. The guy who built his whole career on blurring the lines between real and fake fighting, well, he got exposed when he went up against a real fighter.
What a crazy turn of events. So the manipulator gets manipulated.
That's a good way to put it. Takada helped pave the way for a sport that valued actual fighting skills over, carefully crafted narratives.
Talk about unintended consequences. So Takada's fighting career, it flops, but his involvement with Pride and other UWFI guys like Kazushi Sakuraba, they helped make Pride into a major force in Japanese MMA.
Exactly. Takada's legacy, it's complicated. He was great at kayfabe, a brilliant promoter, and in a lot of ways, a visionary. I mean, he saw the potential for a more realistic style of wrestling, but he was also a product of his time. Back then, the lines between performance and reality, they were super blurry.
It's interesting to think about, Even the most carefully planned stories, they can get disrupted. People can step up and challenge the status quo. Sometimes the best stories are the ones that go off script.
That's a great way to put it. What should our listeners take away from this deep dive into, Japanese pro wrestling shoot incidents?
Well, I think these incidents, they give us a glimpse into the human drama that happens behind the scenes of pro wrestling. You see the ego, the ambition, the artistry, and that constant tension between keeping the illusion alive and, well, pushing the boundaries.
That's a great point. They remind us that even in a world of predetermined outcomes, there's always room for the unexpected.
For moments of genuine emotion and for individuals to challenge the norm.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly, they make us question our own perceptions of reality. What do we believe? Where's the line between entertainment and authenticity? And what happens when that line disappears?
Those are some great questions to think about. So next time you watch wrestling or any kind of entertainment, really, remember that there's always more to the story than you see on the surface. That line between performance and reality might be there, but it's not always so clear.